Are you ready to understand what truly drives human behavior and gain control over your own mind? In this audiobook, you will uncover the hidden rules that shape every decision, action, and reaction in daily life. From decoding subconscious motives to recognizing patterns in social interactions, this guide gives you practical strategies to influence outcomes, build strong relationships, and transform your mindset. You'll learn how to ethically apply persuasion, harness habits for change, read body language, and use mental frameworks to achieve lasting personal growth. Every chapter is packed with actionable advice you can use immediately to improve focus, discipline, and decision-making. By the end, you'll have tools to understand yourself and others on a deeper level, guiding you towards success and confidence in every area of life. Subscribe to Audiobook every day to get more life-changing insights and start mastering your mind today. Number 1. Decode subconscious motives behind action. The mind often speaks in small, secret ways. A tightening behind the breastbone when someone criticizes, a sudden hunger for sugar after a long meeting, an urge to check a phone when a difficult thought arrives. Those tiny signals carry more truth than loud declarations. Decoding subconscious motives begins with learning a new kind of literacy, the ability to read those quiet signals without judgment, to treat them like clues rather than accusations. This skill is not mystical. It is practice, observation, and honest interpretation, held together by the deliberate calm of a disciplined mind. Start where the body meets the mind. Most subconscious motives arrive first as sensation. A clenched jaw, a hollow stomach, a restless foot tapping, these are the mind's shorthand. The first action is simple and precise. Become a witness. When a strong reaction appears, notice the location and quality of the sensation. Describe it inwardly in one sentence. For example, a tightness in the throat, like air, is thinning. Naming a sensation immediately shifts part of the impulse from blind reactivity to conscious perception. This creates a space where motive can be examined. Next, translate the sensation into a question. The simplest form works best. What is this trying to protect? The subconscious often acts as a guardian, attempting to keep something safe: status, belonging, certainty, identity, or comfort. Protection can be clumsy. Fear of embarrassment might appear as anger. A desire to belong can feel like a compulsion to agree. Ask the question calmly and without accusation. The goal is discovery, not punishment. This approach is practical and stoic. Impressions must be judged, not chased. Collect data like a careful investigator. Keep a short behavior log for 2 weeks. Each time a strong emotional reaction occurs, record 4 facts: the trigger, what happened, the immediate physical sensation, the thought or story that followed, and the action taken. Do this in one line. No long confessions. Over time, patterns emerge. The same triggers will return. The same stories will reappear. Patterns reveal motive. If discomfort shows up whenever feedback arrives, the motive might be to avoid feeling small. If irritation appears around people who ask for help, the motive might be an internal rule about self-sufficiency. The log removes storytelling and reveals recurring mechanics. Turn hypotheses into experiments. The subconscious is stubborn because it was often useful once. To test a suspected motive, design a small, safe experiment. If the hypothesis is fear of looking foolish causes withdrawal, create a low-stakes situation to intentionally risk a harmless mistake in public, a short comment in a meeting, a deliberately imperfect demonstration. Observe the inner response without escalating it into drama. Note how long the discomfort lasts, what thoughts arrive, and whether the feared consequence actually happens. Most times the catastrophic outcome will not materialize. Repeated, controlled exposure weakens the automatic reaction and provides new evidence to the mind. Language matters. When interpreting motives, avoid moral labels. Replace "I am weak" with "this pattern protects me" by avoiding discomfort. Stoic clarity demands accurate naming without contamination by shame. Precise language reassures the mind and reduces defensiveness. Practice this in the behavior log. After listing the trigger and sensation, add a neutral interpretation and rate confidence from 1 to 5. Over time, confidence will rise as interpretations are tested and refined. Understand root drives. 5 practical categories cover most motives: safety, acceptance, status, autonomy, and meaning. Every strong subconscious reaction tends to map to one of these. For example, a sudden urge to argue might be about status. A sharp retreat after an invitation could be about fear of rejection and therefore acceptance. Use these categories as lenses, not rigid boxes. When a reaction is decoded in this way, the response becomes strategic instead of automatic. If the motive is safety, the action may be to gather information. If it is acceptance, the action may be to practice honest expression that preserves connection. Habits are the programmers of the subconscious. Each habit is a loop: cue, routine, reward. To decode the motive behind a habitual behavior, map that loop. Identify the cue that starts the loop. Is it a time of day, an emotion, or a certain person? Identify the routine that follows the actual behavior. Finally, define the reward. Often the reward is emotional, relief, distraction, rather than tangible. Once the loop is visible, swap the routine for a healthier alternative that provides the same reward. If stress leads to scrolling social media for relief, try a 2-minute breathing practice instead. Test if the new routine satisfies the reward. If it does, the habit weakens its hold. Pay attention to language in relationships. Subconscious motives are often projected onto others. Projection is the mind's shortcut. Attribute an unwanted motive in yourself to another person. When feeling judged, ask whether the judgment originates in the other or in a personal standard. A practical exercise: when conflict flares, pause and complete the sentence, "What I am afraid this situation shows about me is," answer honestly and briefly. Share the insight when appropriate. This practice reduces projection and turns interpersonal friction into information about internal motives. Use short, disciplined practices daily. Make 3 concrete commitments: a 5-minute morning check-in, a midday trigger pause, and a 3-sentence evening review. In the morning, name 1 value to carry through the day. At midday, when energy flags or an emotional jolt appears, stop for 30 seconds and breathe. Then ask, "What does this want from me?" In the evening, write 3 sentences: 1 moment where a subconscious motive showed up, 1 action taken, and 1 small lesson. These tiny rituals train attention and create steady feedback loops that build insight over weeks. Emotional naming is an immediate tool. When the heart races, name the emotion precisely. Anger, shame, embarrassment, loneliness. Naming reduces intensity because it moves the experience into cognition. Combine naming with a stoic reframing. "This is an impression, it is not a command." This short phrase rewires the relationship with emotion. It keeps the mind from acting on impulse and brings action back into the domain of choice. Create a private ritual to test deep narratives. Many motives are woven into stories about identity. "I am not enough. I must always provide." These stories can be disproven through small, repeated counterexamples. Choose 1 limiting narrative and design 3 weekly challenges that contradict it. If the story claims asking for help shows weakness, ask for help 3 times in different contexts: work, home, a public forum. Record outcomes. Most stories are found to be exaggerated after a handful of tests. Discipline paired with evidence dismantles myth. Memory work helps too. Past events often seed motives without current relevance. Use a focused reflection, pick a recurring reaction, and trace it backward. Ask, when did something similar first happen? Who was present? What rule formed because of that event? Often motives built in childhood still operate on adult problems. Awareness is the first step toward rewriting the rule. If a childhood message created an unhelpful rule, form a new rule in clear language and practice it publicly until the subconscious accepts it. Practice moral clarity. Some motives are noble, but misapplied. For example, wanting to contribute may become overcommitment. Use stoic judgment to separate intention from excess. Ask, is this action aligned with long-term values or short-term consolation? Discipline the answer with small, concrete choices. Say no to one request this week, keep one promise to self, accept one small loss. Each disciplined choice trains the mind to prefer deliberate values over reflexive motives. Remember that decoding is not the same as fixing. Awareness brings power, but change happens by repeated action. The Stoic approach is patient and persistent. Use attention as the tool and habit as the mechanism. When a motive is identified, design a tiny behavior that counters or channels it. Repeat until the new pattern becomes automatic. Celebrate small victories. A quiet morning without the old compulsion is progress. A single honest conversation that did not explode is progress. These are the compound interest of self-mastery. End with a practical checklist to use immediately. Notice a sensation, name it, ask what it protects, write one line in the log, design one small test, and choose one alternative routine. Carry this checklist for a week. It will feel awkward at first. That awkwardness is progress, not failure. The mind resists change because it values predictability. Steady attention and disciplined experiments create new predictability, one chosen by reason. Decoding subconscious motives is an act of courage and craftsmanship. It requires calm attention, a refusal to punish, and repeated disciplined action. The inner world is not a mystery to fear, but a field to map. Each insight discovered becomes a lever for better choices. With steady practice, the mind shifts from being a source of hidden commands to a partner in purpose. The work is humble and relentless. The reward is simple, less reactivity, clearer judgment, and a life guided by chosen values rather than secret fears. Number 2. Influence decisions through subtle cues. Influence is not about coercion or manipulation. It is about guiding choices in a way that aligns with reason and intention. People respond to subtle cues long before they consciously realize it. The way a question is asked, the tone of a voice, the timing of a pause, or even a slight nod can steer attention, shift perception, and shape decision. Understanding these cues begins with a commitment to observation, empathy, and disciplined practice. Influence is a skill grounded in awareness, not trickery, and it begins with noticing what others respond to without judgment or assumption. Start by observing patterns in communication. Every person reacts consistently to certain signals, whether verbal, visual, or behavioral. For example, some individuals respond immediately to direct eye contact, while others withdraw or hesitate. Some lean forward when ideas are framed as opportunities. Others resist unless they feel understood first. The key is to watch carefully and map reactions without trying to force them. By noticing natural tendencies, it becomes possible to guide conversations toward constructive outcomes and to help others make decisions that serve both parties effectively. Tone and pacing carry enormous influence. A calm, Measured tone invites trust, whereas a rushed or sharp tone can trigger defensiveness. Pausing before speaking or after asking a question creates space for reflection, nudging the mind toward thought rather than reaction. These moments are subtle, but they create a sense of control in the listener's mind, making them more receptive to guidance. Small smiles in voice, speed and volume are practical tools anyone can practice and refine. Listening to recorded conversations and noting moments where influence occurred or failed can accelerate understanding. Nonverbal signals are equally powerful. Body language, posture, facial expressions, and gestures communicate more than words alone. Leaning slightly forward, maintaining an open stance, or using minimal hand gestures at key moments draws attention without coercion. Mirroring subtle movements creates a sense of familiarity and ease, making it more likely for the other person to engage openly. These cues are not tricks, they are a way to match energy and build connection. Observing which non-verbal cues evoke positive responses and which provoke tension is a practical and ongoing exercise. Framing ideas strategically enhances influence. The human mind is wired to respond to certain patterns in information presentation. Present options in clear, concise steps rather than overwhelming with a flood of data. Highlight benefits that resonate with the listener's priorities rather than your own agenda. When consequences are framed as natural outcomes rather than threats, the mind evaluates them rationally and is more likely to choose wisely. This approach respects autonomy while gently steering attention toward productive decisions. Stories and metaphors, when used sparingly, tap into subconscious processing. People often understand lessons emotionally before intellectually. A well-placed story illustrating a principle can shift perception without confrontation. It is important to select stories that resonate with real-life experience, are relatable and remain authentic. Stories should illuminate choices, not obscure them. Practicing story delivery aloud sharpens timing, rhythm, and the subtle cues embedded in storytelling that influence perception naturally. Questions are powerful instruments of subtle influence. Open-ended questions invite thought, while closed questions can lead toward specific decisions. Asking questions that prompt reflection rather than defense encourages the listener to examine their own reasoning. For instance, asking, "What is most important to you in this situation?" is more influential than stating, "You should prioritize this." Thoughtful questioning fosters autonomy and engagement while subtly guiding conclusions. It is a practice in precision, attentiveness, and restraint. Environmental cues also shape decision-making. People respond unconsciously to their surroundings. Lighting, seating arrangements, background noise, and visual cues can all enhance receptivity or create tension. Simple adjustments, arranging chairs to foster eye contact, reducing distractions, or providing written summaries, create a more conducive setting for thoughtful decision-making. Awareness of environmental influence transforms ordinary spaces into tools for constructive interaction without overt pressure. Timing is often overlooked, but critical. Presenting an idea too early or too late can reduce its effectiveness. Subtle observation allows one to detect readiness, emotional state, and mental focus. Moments of calm, openness, or curiosity are ideal for introducing concepts. Interrupting someone during stress or distraction diminishes influence and breeds resistance. Training attention to timing cultivates patience and precision, essential elements of ethical influence. Repetition and consistency matter in shaping decisions subtly. People respond to repeated exposure because familiarity fosters trust. Reiterate key points with subtle variation to reinforce understanding without monotony. Consistency in messaging, behavior, and tone reinforces credibility. When actions and words align over time, influence strengthens naturally. Daily practice in clear, consistent communication builds this effect incrementally, creating long-term impact. Recognizing emotional triggers enhances subtle influence. Each person carries emotional filters shaped by experience. A gentle cue that resonates with a listener's values or concerns often moves them faster than direct argument. Emotional attunement requires observation, empathy, and a willingness to pause before reacting. By understanding emotional context, influence can be applied in ways that reduce resistance and invite cooperation. Journaling reactions, reflecting on responses, and adjusting strategies cultivate this skill over weeks and months. Ethical application is central. Influence should never serve manipulation or exploitation. The goal is to guide, clarify, and support informed decision-making. Align influence with integrity by checking whether the suggested path benefits both parties and respects autonomy. Ethical influence builds trust, credibility, and long-term effectiveness. Each interaction becomes a laboratory for disciplined practice, reinforcing both skill and character simultaneously. Practice daily with intention. Observe conversations without judgment, noting reactions, pauses, gestures, and tone. Experiment with small adjustments in phrasing, posture, or timing, and observe outcomes. Reflect on what worked, what failed, and why. Influence is learned through patient repetition, careful observation, and disciplined self-awareness. Even minor improvements compound over time, creating profound effects in both professional and personal interactions. Influence also requires emotional control. Subtle cues are ineffective if delivered with tension, impatience, or anxiety. A calm, present, and steady demeanor magnifies subtle signals. This is the practical application of self-mastery. The more regulated the mind, the more reliable the influence. Breathing exercises, momentary pauses, and focused attention enhance composure. Influence is never about dominating others. It is about projecting stability, clarity, and alignment between intention and expression. Reflection consolidates learning. After each interaction, review what cues were present, which influenced decisions, and which were overlooked. Identify patterns in your own behavior and the responses they generated. This reflection transforms ordinary interactions into structured practice sessions, building both awareness and skill. Over time, the subtleties of communication become intuitive, almost invisible, yet profoundly effective. Influence through subtle cues is not instantaneous. It is a slow, deliberate cultivation of observation, ethical strategy, and self-discipline. By committing to daily attention, reflection, and controlled experimentation, the ability to guide decisions subtly becomes natural. Others respond to clarity, calm, and consistency, and these qualities are developed internally. Mastery arises when external influence mirrors internal balance. The more composed and intentional one is, the more effective subtle guidance becomes. A practical exercise is to observe a conversation without speaking for 10 minutes, noting all nonverbal cues, tone shifts, gestures, and pauses. Identify one cue that seems to influence attention or decision-making. In the next conversation, intentionally replicate a positive cue to test its effect. Continue with slight variations, gradually building an internal library of effective, ethical strategies. This method allows for repeated practice without risk and integrates subtle influence into daily life. Influence is ultimately the art of alignment. Align attention, tone, posture, and timing with purpose. Align observation with empathy. Align messaging with clarity. Subtle cues shape decisions when applied deliberately, consistently, and ethically. Each small adjustment compounds, creating trust, engagement, and alignment between intention and outcome. Over months, influence becomes a natural extension of presence, discipline, and awareness. The power of subtle cues lies in their quietness. They work because they respect autonomy, create clarity, and foster calm reflection. Mastery requires patience, observation, and disciplined action. Each decision influenced ethically and thoughtfully strengthens credibility and self-confidence. By focusing on subtlety, consistency, and empathy, it becomes possible to guide choices in ways that are constructive, lasting, and aligned with both personal and shared goals. The practice transforms ordinary communication into a channel for purpose, understanding, and disciplined impact. Number 3. Recognize cognitive biases in thinking. The mind is not always a neutral observer. It interprets information through shortcuts, assumptions, and ingrained patterns. These mental shortcuts, known as cognitive biases, shape perception, judgment, and decision-making. Recognizing these biases is not about criticizing the mind, but about understanding the invisible rules that govern thinking. Awareness is the first step toward clarity. Once these patterns are observed, it becomes possible to correct distortions, make more rational decisions, and cultivate a life guided by insight rather than automatic judgment. Begin with self-observation. Each day, take note of moments when reactions feel automatic, extreme, or emotionally charged. These moments often reveal bias at work. A sudden sense of certainty about a complex problem may signal overconfidence. A dismissive reaction toward someone with differing opinions may indicate confirmation bias, the tendency to favor information that confirms existing beliefs. The key is to catch these moments early, to pause and examine the mental machinery behind them. Observation requires honesty and curiosity without judgment. Understand that cognitive biases serve a purpose. They are mental shortcuts designed to save time and energy. In simple decisions, these shortcuts allow rapid responses without exhaustive thought. However, they can mislead in complex or unfamiliar situations. Recognizing biases is about reclaiming choice. When a pattern of thinking is identified, it becomes possible to step outside the automatic response and evaluate the situation more clearly. The process is practical and deliberate. Pause, identify, assess, and decide. Begin cataloging biases that appear frequently in your own thinking. Anchoring bias causes the mind to rely too heavily on the first piece of information encountered. Availability bias prioritizes information that is recent, vivid, or emotionally charged, even if it is not statistically significant. The Dunning-Kruger effect inflates confidence in areas of weak knowledge, while hindsight bias makes past events seem predictable when they were not. Keep a small notebook and record instances when these patterns appear. Note the situation, the automatic judgment, and the eventual outcome. Over time, patterns will emerge, revealing areas of vulnerability in thinking. Question assumptions systematically. Whenever a strong conclusion arises, trace the reasoning backward. Ask, what assumptions am I making? Are they supported by evidence? Could alternative explanations exist? This simple framework transforms reactive thinking into deliberate evaluation. By regularly applying this method, it becomes possible to detect errors before decisions are finalized. The habit of questioning assumptions is a foundational skill in intellectual discipline, providing clarity in personal and professional life alike. Seek perspectives that challenge existing beliefs. Bias often thrives in echo chambers, where only confirming information is noticed. Engage with ideas, people, and data that oppose current views. When confronted with dissonance, resist the impulse to dismiss it. Instead, explore it with curiosity. Identify the bias that triggers defensive reactions. Was it motivated reasoning, where the mind selectively interprets facts to maintain a desired conclusion? By embracing discomfort as a teacher, the mind begins to recognize its own limitations and adjust more effectively. Language shapes perception and can reveal bias. Words carry implicit judgment, framing, and emphasis that influence thinking. Notice the difference between stating facts and labeling. Describing someone as careless signals judgment, while stating the action observed without interpretation creates neutrality. Neutral language opens the door to clearer analysis and reduces the automatic distortions of bias. Recording thoughts and reviewing them later provides insight into habitual linguistic cues that reinforce biased thinking. Decision-making under pressure amplifies bias. Stress, fatigue, and time constraints narrow mental bandwidth, causing reliance on heuristics. Simple strategies reduce this risk. Pause before major decisions. Break complex problems into smaller components. Seek input from others to counteract blind spots. Using structured frameworks, pros and cons lists, decision matrices, or probability assessments reduces reliance on instinctive biases. The goal is practical. Slow down enough to give rational thought precedence over automatic patterns. Emotional awareness is essential. Bias is often intertwined with emotion. Fear, desire, anger, and attachment shape perception subtly. A strong emotional reaction can make a problem seem more urgent or threatening than it is. Observing emotional cues before responding creates a space for rational evaluation. Techniques such as deep breathing, brief reflection, or stepping away from the situation are simple but powerful ways to manage the influence of emotion on thought. Reflection strengthens recognition. At the end of each day, review key decisions and judgments. Ask, where might bias have influenced my thinking? Which assumptions were tested? What evidence was ignored? Journaling these reflections trains the mind to spot recurring patterns. Over time, this practice builds an internal radar for bias, allowing more deliberate responses and improving both personal and professional judgment. Testing assumptions with small experiments provides concrete feedback. If a decision was driven by confirmation bias, deliberately seek out opposing evidence next time. If overconfidence led to a rushed conclusion, slow down the process and collect more information. These small, controlled experiments create data points that recalibrate mental models. The process is iterative and disciplined, reinforcing clarity and accountability. Real-world application is the difference between theoretical understanding and practical mastery. Recognize that bias is not uniform across domains. Financial decisions, interpersonal judgments, career choices, and health evaluations each carry different patterns of distortion. Tailor observation to the context. In finance, the tendency to overvalue recent performance or to follow the herd can dominate. In social interactions, biases about status, appearance, or group identity may appear. Awareness of context-specific biases allows targeted interventions that improve accuracy and outcomes. Domain-specific recognition is essential for practical skill. Cognitive humility is the foundation of growth. Accept that the mind will err and that biases are part of human nature. Resistance to acknowledging errors often stems from ego or attachment to identity. Approaching bias with humility transforms mistakes into opportunities for learning. Rather than being threatened by evidence of error, it is possible to view it as information to refine judgment. This perspective encourages disciplined reflection and continuous self-improvement. Systematize bias recognition into routines. A short, daily practice can have a profound effect. Each morning, anticipate decisions that may arise. Consider which biases could distort judgment. During the day, pause in key moments to observe reactions and assumptions. Each evening, reflect on decisions and identify evidence of bias. This routine creates continuous calibration, turning awareness into habit. Daily repetition transforms scattered insight into a stable skill set. External tools augment recognition. Checklists, decision frameworks, and third-party feedback are effective. Structured prompts help highlight common distortions. For instance, before concluding, ask, "Am I relying on the first impression? What evidence contradicts my view? Would someone else see this differently?" These practical steps provide scaffolding for thinking, reducing reliance on intuition alone. Tools amplify the disciplined awareness cultivated internally. Bias recognition leads to clearer action. Once distortions are spotted, steps can be taken to counter them. Adjust expectations, seek additional information, or modify behavior. Each adjustment reinforces rational thinking and increases confidence in decision-making. Small, consistent interventions create a compounding effect, gradually replacing reflexive patterns with deliberate, reasoned choices. The reward is tangible: decisions that are more accurate, relationships that are more harmonious, and a life guided by intentional thought rather than habit or impulse. The process is continuous. Cognitive biases do not vanish once identified. They recur, evolve, and appear in new contexts. Mastery lies in persistence, reflection, and disciplined awareness. Each instance of recognition strengthens the ability to respond thoughtfully, fostering resilience against mental distortions. Over months and years, this practice cultivates a mind capable of observing itself, adjusting with precision, and acting with clarity. Practical exercises solidify these skills. Track 3 decisions daily, noting the assumptions, evidence, emotional influences, and potential biases. Challenge at least one assumption per day with counter-evidence or alternative perspectives. Reflect weekly on patterns observed and adjust strategies accordingly. Through repetition, these exercises make recognition of cognitive biases automatic, and over time, thinking becomes less reactive and more intentional. The ultimate outcome of recognizing cognitive biases is freedom. Freedom from impulsive reactions, from distorted perception, and from the invisible chains of mental shortcuts. Awareness allows action guided by reason, values, and purpose. Each decision made with clarity strengthens confidence, reinforces self-discipline, and aligns life with chosen goals rather than hidden distortions. Mastery of this skill transforms ordinary thinking into a precise, deliberate, and empowered practice, shaping every interaction, every choice, and every outcome toward reasoned success. Number 4. Apply persuasion techniques ethically daily. Persuasion is not a matter of force or manipulation. It is the art of presenting ideas so clearly, genuinely, and respectfully that others can see the value in them and choose to act accordingly. Applied ethically, it is a practice rooted in empathy, awareness, and integrity. Daily use of persuasion techniques strengthens influence while maintaining trust and authenticity. This begins with understanding the balance between speaking with conviction and listening with intention. True persuasion is relational, not transactional, and its effects compound over time when practiced consistently and consciously. Start by mastering clarity. People are persuaded by messages they can easily understand. Ambiguity, complexity, or overloading information can obscure even the strongest arguments. When communicating, focus on delivering one clear, actionable point at a time. Use concrete language, concrete examples and precise statements, the mind processes clarity faster than enthusiasm or rhetoric, and clear communication lays the foundation for trust, understanding, and ethical influence. This principle applies in conversations, written messages, or presentations. Simplicity and directness amplify persuasiveness. Empathy forms the core of ethical persuasion. Understanding the perspective, desires, and concerns of others allows influence without coercion. Observing body language, tone, and verbal cues provides insight into what matters to a person in real time. Tailor your communication to align with these priorities while remaining truthful to your own intentions. Empathy is not about manipulation. It is about meeting people where they are, offering solutions that genuinely benefit them, and presenting your ideas in a context that resonates with their needs. Storytelling enhances ethical persuasion. Humans respond to narratives far more than to abstract logic alone. Real-life examples, case studies, or personal anecdotes make arguments relatable and memorable. A story conveys meaning emotionally while allowing listeners to draw their own conclusions. Ethical storytelling avoids exaggeration or fabrication. Its power comes from authenticity and relevance. Practice crafting brief stories that illustrate key points, emphasizing lessons rather than pressure. Stories, when aligned with truth and intention, provide a subtle yet profound means of influencing decisions positively. Listening actively is a technique often overlooked in daily persuasion. People are more likely to be influenced when they feel genuinely heard. Active listening involves not just hearing words, but observing emotions, intent, and context. Paraphrase, reflect, and summarize without judgment. Respond based on understanding, not assumption. This practice signals respect and attentiveness, building credibility. Listening allows the persuader to uncover obstacles, clarify misunderstandings, and adapt the approach, making persuasion not coercive, but collaborative and mutually beneficial. Framing requests strategically reinforces ethical influence. The mind responds differently depending on how options are presented. Highlight potential benefits rather than imposing directives. Present choices in a way that aligns with the listener's values and priorities. Instead of saying, "You must do this," articulate, "This approach could help achieve the outcome you want." Framing in positive terms respects autonomy and enhances receptivity. Regularly practicing reframing ensures that daily communication remains persuasive without undermining trust or integrity. Timing magnifies effectiveness. Even the most compelling message can fail if delivered at the wrong moment. Observe when the other person is attentive, open, and receptive. Emotional states, environmental factors, and context influence readiness to hear and act on information. Pause when necessary. Deliver ideas gradually rather than overwhelming someone at once. Ethical persuasion thrives on patience, awareness, and sensitivity to timing. Daily practice of observing readiness and pacing communication builds a natural rhythm that enhances influence consistently over time. Reciprocity is a subtle but powerful principle. People are naturally inclined to respond positively to acts of goodwill or helpfulness. Providing value before requesting anything increases the likelihood of cooperation. This does not mean manipulation. Genuine assistance, guidance, or support creates mutual benefit and opens doors for influence. Daily practice of giving without expectation reinforces character, builds trust, and establishes credibility. Ethical reciprocity strengthens relationships while naturally enhancing persuasive potential. Consistency in words and actions strengthens influence. When actions align with statements, credibility rises. People are persuaded by reliability and integrity, not merely by eloquence. Small, consistent demonstrations of commitment, honesty, and follow-through matter more than occasional grand gestures. Daily attention to alignment between intent, communication, and behavior builds authority without force. This subtle consistency enhances ethical persuasion because trust becomes the channel through which influence flows naturally. Questions drive reflection and commitment more effectively than directives. Thoughtful questioning guides others to examine assumptions, priorities, and outcomes themselves. For example, asking, "How could this choice align with your goals?" encourages autonomous reasoning. People are more likely to embrace decisions they reach through guided reflection than through external pressure. Daily practice in posing precise, open-ended questions fosters deeper engagement, insight, and self-motivated action, all while maintaining ethical standards. Demonstrating social proof subtly supports persuasion. Humans are influenced by patterns and the behavior of others, but this must be presented accurately and ethically. Highlight examples where actions or strategies have succeeded without exaggeration. Present facts, testimonials, or observed outcomes honestly. Social proof, used correctly, reassures and encourages decision-making without pressure or deception. Observing its effect in small daily interactions sharpens the ability to apply it ethically and effectively. Ethical persuasion requires humility. Recognize that not every attempt will succeed and respect the autonomy of the other person. Avoid imposing ideas or creating unnecessary pressure. Influence is most sustainable when it is voluntary, informed, and aligned with shared values. Practicing restraint daily, pausing before insisting, reflecting before persuading, cultivates both skill and integrity. Humility transforms persuasion from a technique into a disciplined practice of guidance and collaboration. Feedback accelerates skill development. After conversations, reflect on what worked and what did not. Consider how your tone, timing, framing, and questions affected receptivity. Adjust approaches based on observation and experience. Feedback can also come from trusted peers or mentors who provide insight into blind spots. Daily reflection on interactions fosters continuous improvement, turning ordinary communication into a laboratory for ethical influence, self-awareness, and mastery. Ethical persuasion is enhanced by preparation. Anticipate potential objections, questions, and concerns. Prepare responses grounded in evidence and empathy. Understanding the perspectives and likely challenges allows communication to remain confident, clear, and respectful. Preparation does not mean scripting or manipulation. It means equipping oneself to respond thoughtfully and accurately. Daily habits of review and rehearsal strengthen the ability to influence effectively and honestly when the moment arises. Small, deliberate actions compound over time. Influence does not require grand gestures. Each day presents countless opportunities, offering a helpful suggestion, guiding a decision with insight, framing information positively, or asking a thoughtful question. The cumulative effect of these small actions builds a reputation of credibility, trustworthiness, and competence. Daily application transforms ethical persuasion from a concept into an integrated life skill, expanding impact naturally and responsibly. Emotional intelligence is inseparable from effective persuasion. Recognizing and regulating one's own emotions while perceiving those of others enhances influence. Responding calmly to resistance, acknowledging concerns, and validating feelings creates receptivity. Emotional attunement ensures that guidance is supportive rather than coercive. Developing awareness of subtle cues in tone, expression, and posture sharpens this skill. Practicing emotional intelligence daily embeds ethical persuasion into authentic human connection. The ultimate principle of ethical persuasion is alignment. Align communication with truth, intent, and value. Align timing with readiness. Align messages with priorities and concerns. When alignment exists, influence becomes effortless and lasting. Repetition of this practice builds integrity, authority, and effectiveness. Daily attention to alignment ensures that persuasion remains a disciplined exercise of skill and character rather than manipulation. Practical exercises integrate theory into habit. Begin by identifying one decision you want to influence ethically each day. Observe the context, select the technique that aligns with integrity, and execute it. Afterward, reflect on the outcome. What worked, what could improve, and what cues were most effective. This disciplined approach turns ordinary encounters into opportunities for mastery, reinforcing both skill and ethical standards. Ethical persuasion strengthens relationships, clarity, and decision-making. By applying principles consciously every day through clarity, empathy, timing, framing, storytelling, questions, consistency, feedback, and reflection, persuasion becomes a tool for mutual benefit. Daily practice cultivates presence, awareness, and subtle guidance, creating an environment where influence is a natural extension of character. Mastery is gradual, iterative, and deliberate, transforming ordinary communication into a channel for constructive impact, shared understanding, and principled leadership. Number 5. Understand emotional triggers in others. Emotions are the silent currents beneath human behavior, shaping actions, reactions, and decisions often before awareness arises. Understanding emotional triggers in others is not about manipulation. It is about clarity, empathy, and communication that fosters connection and trust. Every human interaction carries layers of emotional cues that signal comfort, discomfort, fear, desire, or frustration. Recognizing these cues requires focused observation, deliberate practice, and a disciplined mindset that separates personal judgment from objective insight. When mastered, this skill allows one to interact with others in ways that are compassionate, effective, and deeply resonant. Start by observing reactions closely. Facial expressions, tone, posture, and small gestures often reveal emotional responses faster than words. A slight tightening of the lips, a pause before answering, or a subtle shift in posture can indicate tension, uncertainty, or defensiveness. Conversely, leaning forward, nodding, and relaxed expressions suggest openness or agreement. Daily practice involves paying attention to these signals in every conversation, noticing patterns over time, and linking them to specific topics, situations, or behaviors that seem to trigger strong emotional responses. This exercise builds an intuitive understanding of the unspoken emotional landscape. Words themselves carry emotional weight. People react not only to content, but also to phrasing, emphasis, and context. Certain words may evoke pride, fear, or frustration, depending on personal experience. Listening carefully to which terms provoke intensity can reveal underlying sensitivities or priorities. For instance, words related to fairness may elicit strong reactions in some individuals, while recognition may be a trigger for others. Recording observations about language patterns in interactions provides actionable insight into what consistently affects emotional responses and guides more conscious communication. Empathy is essential. Understanding emotional triggers involves stepping into the other person's perspective while maintaining clarity and composure. It is a disciplined form of attention that avoids assumptions. Ask, what might this situation feel like from their standpoint? What past experiences might shape this response? This approach combines observation with imagination, allowing the mind to anticipate emotional reactions without projecting personal biases. Practicing empathy daily strengthens the ability to read subtle cues and respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. Context shapes triggers. Emotional responses often depend on environment, timing, and circumstances. A comment made in private may be received differently than the same comment in public. Stress, fatigue, or external pressures amplify reactions, making seemingly minor stimuli appear significant. Observing and noting the situational context of reactions helps in predicting triggers and adjusting communication strategies accordingly. This understanding promotes deliberate interactions that account for both internal and external factors affecting behavior. Patterns emerge over repeated interactions. Certain topics, phrases, or actions consistently evoke similar responses. Recognizing these patterns allows for proactive adjustment, improving communication, and reducing unnecessary friction. Keeping a mental or written log of repeated emotional reactions can help identify these triggers clearly. Patterns reveal core values, fears, and priorities, offering insight into what motivates behavior and how to approach interactions in ways that respect those underlying factors. Active listening amplifies understanding. True listening involves focusing entirely on the other person, observing tone, pace, and choice of words, and acknowledging feelings without immediately offering solutions or judgments. This attentiveness encourages openness and often prompts individuals to reveal emotions and priorities they might otherwise withhold. By practicing active listening consistently, the mind becomes attuned to subtle cues, and patterns of triggers become easier to identify and interpret accurately. Responses should be measured and intentional. Once triggers are identified, the goal is not to exploit them, but to respond in ways that foster positive interaction and mutual understanding. For example, if criticism triggers defensiveness in someone, framing feedback with acknowledgement and support rather than direct challenge reduces resistance and promotes constructive dialogue. Practicing measured responses daily reinforces emotional intelligence and strengthens trust, demonstrating respect for both the other person's feelings and one's own composure. Timing and pacing are critical. Emotional intensity can fluctuate depending on context, energy levels, and immediate priorities. Introducing potentially sensitive topics when attention is divided or stress is high can provoke unnecessary conflict. Observing cues for readiness, such as tone of voice or body posture, and waiting for moments of calm or focus enhances receptivity. Daily practice in timing communication builds discipline, patience, and the ability to influence interactions positively without causing emotional escalation. Nonverbal signals often precede verbal expression. Microexpressions, gestures, and posture shifts can indicate emotional shifts before the person articulates them. Training oneself to notice these subtle cues enhances the ability to respond appropriately. For instance, a sudden tensing of shoulders or averted gaze may signal discomfort or resistance. Recognizing these early indicators allows one to adapt approach, tone, or phrasing before tension escalates, preventing conflict and maintaining connection. Questions can reveal hidden emotions. Open-ended, carefully phrased questions invite people to express thoughts and feelings without feeling interrogated. Asking, "How do you feel about this approach?" or "What concerns might you have about this decision?" encourages reflection and disclosure. Observing how they answer both verbally and non-verbally provides insight into their triggers, values, and priorities. Practicing this technique regularly improves the ability to uncover motivations in real time while maintaining ethical interaction. Self-regulation enhances perception of triggers. Observing another's emotional cues requires a calm and focused mind. Strong personal reactions can distort perception, leading to misinterpretation. Practices such as deep breathing, pausing before responding, and maintaining awareness of one's own emotional state ensure clarity. When the observer remains steady, subtle shifts in others' expressions, tone and body language become more apparent, allowing for accurate understanding and response. Empowering rather than controlling interactions is the ethical foundation of understanding triggers. Awareness of another person's emotional responses should guide communication to foster understanding, collaboration, and shared goals. Recognizing that every emotional reaction carries information, not obligation, prevents coercion and builds trust. Daily practice involves adjusting phrasing, tone, or behavior to reduce unnecessary friction while respecting autonomy. Reflection strengthens mastery. After each interaction, review what triggers appeared, how they were expressed, and what responses were effective. Identify patterns, surprises, or misunderstandings, and consider alternative approaches for future interactions. Journaling or mental reflection embeds learning, transforming observations into practical knowledge. Continuous reflection ensures that understanding emotional triggers becomes habitual and actionable, rather than intermittent or superficial. Anticipation enables proactive engagement. Recognizing likely emotional triggers before they arise allows preparation and adaptation. If a person consistently reacts negatively to public criticism, feedback can be framed privately and constructively. If a colleague becomes stressed when deadlines approach, offering support or adjusting communication can prevent escalation. Anticipation requires attention to past behavior, careful observation, and disciplined foresight, reinforcing ethical and effective interaction. Cultural and personal differences influence triggers. Values, upbringing, and past experiences shape responses in ways that are often invisible on the surface. Developing sensitivity to these differences through observation, inquiry, and humility enhances accuracy in understanding emotional cues. Practices such as asking about preferences, reflecting on past experiences, and noting variations in behavior across contexts refine perception and foster respectful communication. Daily practice compounds skill. Each conversation is an opportunity to observe, interpret, and respond thoughtfully. Small moments acknowledging discomfort, providing reassurance, noting subtle cues, build expertise over time. The cumulative effect is a deep, intuitive ability to navigate complex emotional landscapes, creating interactions that are constructive, respectful, and aligned with long-term relationship building. Understanding emotional triggers strengthens connection, influence, and clarity in communication. By observing subtle cues, practicing empathy, managing timing, listening actively, and reflecting consistently, it becomes possible to anticipate, interpret, and respond to emotions with insight and integrity. This skill cultivates trust, reduces unnecessary conflict, and allows interactions to be guided by awareness rather than assumption. Over time, disciplined attention to emotional triggers creates a foundation for profound relational intelligence and consistent personal growth. Number 6. Analyze body language for insight. The human body communicates in ways words often cannot. Every posture, gesture, facial expression, and movement conveys information about thoughts, intentions, and emotions. Analyzing body language is a discipline in observation, interpretation, and reflection that transforms everyday interactions into a source of insight. This skill does not require training in psychology or expertise in nonverbal theory. It requires attention, patience, and a disciplined curiosity. By observing subtle cues, patterns, and consistencies, it becomes possible to understand intentions, detect discrepancies between words and feelings, and navigate interactions with greater clarity and effectiveness. Begin by cultivating awareness of baseline behavior. Each individual has a default way of sitting, moving, gesturing, and expressing. Observing these neutral patterns allows deviations to become more noticeable. For example, a person who typically maintains relaxed shoulders may exhibit tension in high-stakes discussions. A normally expressive speaker may become rigid or withdrawn when uncomfortable. Recognizing these shifts is the first step in decoding underlying emotional or cognitive states. Daily observation in both professional and personal contexts hones this perception and sharpens intuition over time. Facial expressions are rich sources of insight. Microexpressions, brief, involuntary facial movements, can reveal hidden emotions before conscious control intervenes. A fleeting tightening of the lips, a subtle raising of the eyebrows, or a momentary shift in gaze can indicate doubt, surprise, frustration, or agreement. Observing facial cues alongside verbal content provides context and reduces misinterpretation. This practice demands patience, focus, and repeated exposure, as microexpressions often last only fractions of a second, but carry disproportionate meaning about the person's inner state. Posture conveys confidence, openness, or defensiveness. Upright posture, squared shoulders, and balanced weight distribution suggest alertness and engagement. Slouching, crossed arms, or leaning backward may indicate discomfort, resistance, or disengagement. Observing posture in real time and comparing it with baseline behavior allows interpretation of current emotional states or attitudes. Over time, awareness of posture patterns across different contexts provides a nuanced understanding of how people express comfort, confidence, or tension physically. Gestures amplify meaning and often precede verbal expression. Hands, arms, and movements signal intention, emphasis, or emotion. Open palms suggest honesty or receptivity, while clenched fists may signal tension, frustration, or determination. Repetitive movements, such as tapping fingers or bouncing feet, may indicate impatience or anxiety. Observing gestures in clusters rather than isolation provides context and prevents misreading. Daily attention to gestures in conversations, meetings, or casual interactions. The ability to decode subtle signals consistently and accurately. Eye behavior is a crucial channel of communication. Gaze direction, blinking frequency, and pupil dilation reveal focus, interest, and emotional intensity. Direct eye contact conveys confidence and engagement, while avoidance or rapid shifting may indicate discomfort, uncertainty, or distraction. Pupil changes often reflect emotional arousal or cognitive processing. Observing eye behavior alongside verbal cues enhances understanding of intention and emotional state, providing actionable insight into unspoken responses. Clusters of signals carry more weight than individual cues. No single gesture, expression, or posture can reliably indicate a person's internal state. True understanding arises when multiple cues converge to suggest a consistent emotional or cognitive pattern. For instance, crossed arms alone may simply reflect coldness, but combined with averted gaze, tightened jaw, and shallow breathing, it may indicate discomfort or resistance. Training oneself to observe clusters rather than isolated behaviors reduces error and increases accuracy in interpreting body language. Context is essential in interpreting physical cues. Environmental factors, social norms, and individual differences influence behavior. A gesture meaningful in one culture may be neutral or offensive in another. Awareness of context prevents misinterpretation and fosters respect. Observing environmental and situational influences on body language daily allows for more precise interpretation, integrating physical cues with situational awareness to generate practical insight. Movement dynamics also provide clues. Speed, Rhythm and fluidity of movement reveal emotional and cognitive states. Quick, erratic gestures often signal agitation or anxiety, while slow, deliberate movements suggest calmness, thoughtfulness, or self-control. Observing movement patterns in conjunction with facial expressions and posture enhances the depth of insight. Regular practice in noticing these dynamics in natural settings, such as meetings or casual interactions, strengthens the ability to interpret subtle signals effectively. Mirroring behaviors often indicate connection or rapport. When individuals unconsciously mimic each other's posture, gestures, or expressions, it reflects alignment, comfort, or agreement. Observing mirroring provides insight into relational dynamics and can guide the tone and approach of interactions. Ethical use of mirroring enhances communication and connection without manipulation, creating genuine understanding and cooperation. Daily attention to these patterns builds intuition about interpersonal engagement and responsiveness. Breathing patterns reveal stress, relaxation, and emotional intensity. Shallow, rapid breaths often accompany anxiety, excitement, or tension, while slow, steady breathing reflects calmness and control. Observing changes in breathing during conversations can indicate moments of stress or heightened attention. Incorporating this observation alongside other physical cues provides a fuller picture of emotional and cognitive states. Practicing awareness of breathing patterns over time develops sensitivity to subtle shifts that often precede verbal expression. Touch and personal space convey emotion and intention subtly. Proximity, orientation, and movement toward or away from others reflect comfort, engagement, or avoidance. Respecting these boundaries, while observing how they change in different interactions, provides insight into relationship dynamics and emotional triggers. Daily attentiveness to these cues in natural social contexts enhances relational intelligence and informs communication strategies. Ethical interpretation is crucial. Body language analysis is a tool for insight, not for manipulation. Observing and understanding cues should inform respectful responses and better communication, never coercion or exploitation. Ethical awareness ensures that insight gained from observation strengthens trust, collaboration, and connection, rather than undermining integrity. Daily reflection on the ethical application of observations reinforces disciplined practice and maintains alignment with personal values. Reflection consolidates learning. After interactions, reviewing observed behaviors, deviations from baseline, and clusters of cues deepens understanding. Asking questions such as, "What did these signals indicate about their state?" or "How did my presence or words influence these expressions?" creates a feedback loop. Journaling or mental reflection embeds learning into long-term skill, ensuring body language analysis becomes second nature. Preparation amplifies insight. Anticipating scenarios, observing likely triggers, and considering context before engaging allows for more accurate interpretation and informed responses. Preparation transforms observation from passive noticing into active, disciplined practice. Daily readiness to observe and analyze body language in varied contexts builds consistency, accuracy, and practical competence. Analysis of body language strengthens decision-making and relationships. Recognizing signals of discomfort, engagement, agreement, or resistance allows adaptation of approach, tone, or message in real time. This skill reduces miscommunication, prevents unnecessary conflict, and enhances influence ethically. Daily practice ensures these insights are applied naturally, improving both professional and personal interactions. Feedback from outcomes consolidates mastery. Comparing observations with actual responses or verbal clarification allows refinement of interpretation. Noting where cues aligned with feelings or intentions and where misinterpretation occurred strengthens judgment over time. This iterative process transforms observation into actionable understanding, creating reliable insight that guides decisions and communication. Daily exercises reinforce skills. Observe one person for 5 minutes, noting posture, gestures, expressions, eye movements, and breathing. Identify deviations from baseline and consider possible emotional or cognitive states. Reflect on the accuracy of interpretations by checking verbal or behavioral feedback. Repeating this practice across multiple interactions builds an intuitive ability to read body language with precision. Mastering body language analysis cultivates patience, awareness, and emotional intelligence. Over time, subtle cues become clear indicators of thought, intention, and feeling. Insight derived from observation informs communication, strengthens relationships, and enhances decision-making. Disciplined, ethical, and consistent practice transforms ordinary turns into opportunities for understanding, connection, and influence grounded in respect and clarity. By observing, reflecting, and applying understanding daily, the ability to analyze body language becomes a natural extension of perception. The mind, disciplined to notice patterns, deviations, and context, gains an unspoken map of human behavior. Insight becomes actionable, guiding responses with precision, empathy, and integrity. Mastery lies in continuous observation, ethical interpretation, and deliberate application, ensuring that body language analysis contributes to clearer communication, stronger relationships, and a life shaped by understanding rather than assumption. Number 7. Harness habits to change behavior. Human behavior is shaped less by conscious decisions than by the patterns we repeat consistently. Habits are the invisible architecture of daily life, forming the foundation upon which actions, reactions, and long-term outcomes are built. To change behavior effectively, it is essential to harness habits deliberately, understanding their triggers, routines, and rewards. Habits are not obstacles to change, they are tools that, when managed consciously, allow transformation to occur naturally and sustainably. Mastery of habits begins with observation, awareness, and consistent, disciplined application. Start by identifying the behaviors you wish to cultivate or eliminate. Awareness is critical, because many habits operate automatically, without conscious recognition. Observe your day-to-day actions carefully, noting recurring patterns in behavior, thought, and emotion. Which actions lead to progress, and which create obstacles? Small, consistent patterns often have outsized effects over time. Documenting these behaviors provides clarity and creates a foundation for change. Without observation, habits remain unconscious drivers that resist transformation. Understanding the trigger routine reward cycle is essential. Every habit is initiated by a cue, an internal feeling, external stimulus, or environmental signal that prompts a specific routine. This routine is reinforced by a reward, which can be emotional, physical, or psychological. For example, stress may trigger a routine of checking the phone, with the reward of temporary distraction. By identifying these components, it becomes possible to interrupt or redirect the cycle intentionally. Observing cues closely in daily life sharpens perception and highlights opportunities for behavioral intervention. Start small. Transforming behavior is rarely about radical overhauls. Tiny adjustments compound into meaningful change. A single, well-chosen habit can create momentum that transforms routines and decision-making over time. Focus on one habit at a time, ensuring that it is specific, measurable, and achievable. For instance, committing to 5 minutes of daily focused reflection can gradually build mental clarity and self-discipline. Daily repetition reinforces neural pathways, gradually embedding the habit into automatic behavior. Consistency is more powerful than intensity. Habit formation depends on repetition, not occasional bursts of effort. Performing the desired behavior consistently, even in small increments, strengthens the connection between cue, routine, and reward. Over time, consistency reduces reliance on willpower because the habit becomes a natural part of behavior. Monitoring daily practice through checklists, journals, or reminders reinforces commitment and provides tangible feedback on progress. Environment shapes habits profoundly. Physical, social, and temporal surroundings cue behavior continuously. Rearranging environments to support desired habits enhances success. For instance, placing healthy snacks within reach, keeping exercise equipment visible, or scheduling work during peak focus hours subtly nudges behavior in the intended direction. Daily attention to environmental triggers allows deliberate control over habit formation and reduces reliance on discipline alone. Substitute rather than suppress behaviors. Attempting to eliminate a habit without replacement often leads to frustration and relapse. Identify an alternative behavior that satisfies the same need or reward. For example, if stress triggers overeating, replace the routine with a brief walk, journaling, or deep breathing. Substitution preserves the reward while changing the routine, creating a sustainable pathway to transformation. Testing and adjusting substitutions daily ensures they align with intrinsic motivation and context. Accountability reinforces habit change. Sharing goals, tracking progress publicly, or partnering with a supportive individual increases commitment and consistency. External accountability strengthens internal discipline by creating feedback loops. Daily reflection on adherence to habits, coupled with reporting or acknowledgement, provides reinforcement and encourages resilience when challenges arise. Accountability transforms solitary effort into a structured, observable system that magnifies results. Track progress meticulously. Measuring outcomes, even in minor increments, creates awareness of improvement and highlights areas needing adjustment. Journaling, habit tracking apps, or simple checklists can quantify progress and reveal patterns of success or failure. Tracking encourages reflection and adaptation, reinforcing the habit loop while keeping motivation high. Daily monitoring ensures that habits evolve intentionally rather than drifting unconsciously. Focus on identity rather than outcome. Sustainable behavior change occurs when habits are tied to identity and self-perception rather than isolated goals. Viewing oneself as a disciplined person, a reader, or someone who prioritizes health reinforces daily actions naturally. When identity aligns with behavior, habits are self-reinforcing and resilient against setbacks. Daily affirmation of identity through action strengthens alignment between perception, intention, and execution. Leverage cues intentionally. Recognizing triggers is not sufficient. They must be managed actively. Introduce positive cues that prompt desired routines and minimize exposure to cues that trigger unwanted behaviors. Visual reminders, specific times of day, or contextual signals can all act as intentional prompts. Daily design of cues ensures habits are initiated reliably and predictably, creating a structured framework for automatic behavior. Emotional awareness enhances habit control. Many behaviors are emotionally driven, and understanding the feelings that precede routines is key. Stress, boredom, excitement, or anxiety can initiate habitual responses unconsciously. By observing emotional triggers, it is possible to redirect routines or introduce pauses that allow conscious decision-making. Daily reflection on emotional states and habitual reactions cultivates both insight and control, reducing impulsive or counterproductive patterns. Gradual escalation maintains momentum. Starting small allows habits to solidify before increasing intensity or complexity. Once a habit is stable, incremental additions, extra repetitions, longer duration, or higher difficulty expand its influence without overwhelming the mind. This gradual approach prevents burnout, maintains consistency, and encourages mastery. Daily practice of building upon small successes compounds progress in a sustainable manner. Rewards consolidate habits. Every routine requires reinforcement to remain compelling. The reward does not need to be extravagant. It can be a sense of accomplishment, a physical sensation, or acknowledgement of effort. Pairing the desired behavior with an immediate positive outcome strengthens neural associations, embedding the habit more firmly. Daily reinforcement ensures that habits remain attractive and automatic even when external motivation wanes. Reflection and adjustment are continuous. Habits evolve and life circumstances change, so routines must be monitored and adapted. Evaluate what works, what falters, and why. Adjust triggers, routines, or rewards to align with current goals and contexts. Daily reflection ensures that habits remain effective, relevant, and aligned with long-term intentions, preventing stagnation or regression. Self-discipline complements habits, but is not a substitute. Willpower alone cannot sustain behavior over time. Structured habits provide the framework that reduces reliance on constant decision-making. Discipline is most effective when applied to establishing, refining, and maintaining these routines. Daily attention to both habit structure and self-discipline ensures enduring behavior change and resilience against distractions or lapses. Visualization supports habit development. Mentally rehearsing routines, responses to triggers, and positive outcomes enhances readiness and motivation. Visualizing success reinforces neural pathways, making physical execution easier and more automatic. Daily visualization, even briefly, strengthens commitment, reduces resistance, and aligns mental intention with physical action. Habits shape identity, environment, and outcomes cumulatively. Each small, repeated behavior contributes to long-term change in personal effectiveness, relationships, health, and mindset. By harnessing habits, consciously observing triggers, designing routines, reinforcing rewards, reflecting and adapting behavior becomes a deliberate instrument of growth. Daily, structured practice transforms ordinary actions into powerful forces for self-improvement, resilience, and purposeful living. Mastery of habits requires patience, attention, and iterative refinement. Over weeks, months, and years, consistent application embeds desired behaviors into the subconscious, making them effortless and automatic. By focusing on deliberate observation, incremental changes, ethical substitution, emotional awareness, and structured reinforcement, it is possible to change behavior at its root. Daily practice converts intention into action, action into habit, and habit into a life defined by conscious choice, disciplined execution, and continuous improvement. Number 8. Detect patterns in social interactions. Human interactions are rarely random. They follow subtle rhythms, recurring behaviors, and unspoken norms that shape relationships, decisions, and influence. Detecting patterns in social interactions is a practice of careful observation, disciplined reflection, and analytical thinking that transforms ordinary encounters into sources of insight. Patterns reveal preferences, priorities, emotional tendencies, and relational dynamics, offering clarity that strengthens communication, cooperation, and influence. Understanding these recurring structures requires patience, attention to detail, and consistency in observing behaviors across different contexts, allowing one to anticipate responses and navigate social landscapes with precision. Begin by observing recurring behaviors in conversations. People tend to respond in predictable ways based on their personality, past experiences, and emotional patterns. Note how individuals react to praise, criticism, disagreement, or support. Some may withdraw when confronted, others may assert themselves aggressively. Tracking these tendencies across interactions creates a mental map of how people communicate under various conditions. Daily attention to these patterns sharpens perception, allowing anticipation of responses and strategic adaptation in social situations. Pay attention to non-verbal signals. Body language, facial expressions, and tone of voice consistently align with emotional states. Observing clusters of non-verbal cues across multiple interactions reveals stable patterns in how individuals express feelings or manage conflict. For example, someone may consistently cross their arms when feeling defensive or maintain steady eye contact when confident. Recognizing these patterns provides insight into unspoken priorities, fears, and comfort levels, allowing responses that foster rapport and understanding. Conversation structure itself reveals patterns. The rhythm of speaking, interruptions, question types, and listening behaviors indicate relational dynamics. Some individuals dominate discussions, while others provide minimal input but reveal insight through careful observation. By noting these structural tendencies, it is possible to adjust communication strategies for clarity, influence, or collaboration. Observing patterns in conversational flow provides tools to navigate social complexity effectively. Contextual consistency is significant. People often behave differently depending on environment, social role, or group composition, yet patterns persist across contexts. Recognize similarities in behavior across professional, personal, and casual settings. Identifying consistencies amidst variation allows for accurate interpretation of intent and emotional response. Daily observation of behavior across multiple settings builds a comprehensive understanding of relational patterns and informs adaptive strategies. Identify triggers that provoke predictable responses. Certain topics, phrases, or situations consistently elicit similar emotional or behavioral reactions. Stress, disagreement, or perceived authority may trigger defensiveness or cooperation, depending on the individual. Observing these triggers and their effects repeatedly creates predictive insight. Daily attentiveness to what prompts recurring reactions provides actionable information for guiding interactions thoughtfully. Pay attention to reciprocal behavior. Social interactions often follow patterns of exchange. Gestures, favors, conversation turns, and emotional support. Recognizing cycles of reciprocity reveals how relationships are maintained and strengthened. Noting when reciprocity is absent or delayed highlights potential tension or imbalance. Detecting these cycles across interactions helps anticipate responses and identify areas requiring adjustment or reinforcement, creating more stable and mutually beneficial relationships. Observe group dynamics carefully. Patterns emerge not only in one-on-one interactions, but also in group settings. Note alliances, hierarchies, dominant voices, and passive participants. Pay attention to how influence spreads, who defers to whom, and how decisions are negotiated. These patterns indicate underlying social structures and priorities that may not be explicitly stated. Daily observation of group interactions develops the ability to navigate collective behavior with insight and strategic awareness. Emotional cycles are often predictable. People experience recurring moods, stress responses, and enthusiasm peaks that influence interactions. Recognizing patterns in emotional intensity and triggers allows timing of communication to align with receptivity. Observing these cycles in daily interactions builds an intuitive sense of when to engage, when to pause, and when to provide support, enhancing both effectiveness and empathy in relationships. Language patterns are highly revealing. The words people choose, the tone they use, and the structure of sentences often repeat under similar conditions. Recognizing recurring linguistic patterns indicates priorities, emotional states, and habitual thinking. For instance, frequent use of qualifiers may signal uncertainty, while assertive statements suggest confidence. Noticing these patterns across multiple conversations provides insight into personality traits, communication style, and underlying motivations. Micro-patterns in behavior accumulate into larger trends. Small, subtle habits, like gestures, phrases, or timing of responses, form stable patterns over time. These micro-patterns often precede larger decisions, preferences, or relationship behaviors. Observing, recording, and reflecting on these subtleties allows predictive insight that informs both short-term interactions and long-term relationship strategies. Daily awareness of micro-patterns strengthens the ability to interpret social behavior accurately. Consistency and deviation are both informative, while repeated behavior indicates stability. Deviations signal change, stress, or shifts in priorities. Detecting these deviations requires a baseline understanding of typical behavior. Changes in tone, posture, or conversational style often provide early warning of tension, disagreement, or emerging opportunities. Daily observation of both consistency and divergence provides a nuanced understanding of relational dynamics and allows timely, informed responses. Patterns emerge not only in others, but also in self-behavior. Recognizing how one reacts across different social situations uncovers personal triggers, biases, and habitual responses. This self-awareness complements the observation of others, creating a comprehensive understanding of social dynamics. Daily reflection on personal responses allows for adjustments, enhancing relational effectiveness and emotional intelligence. Feedback loops reinforce patterns. Actions and reactions in social contexts often generate predictable feedback, creating cycles that influence future interactions. Understanding these loops allows intervention to strengthen positive patterns or mitigate negative ones. Observing how certain behaviors elicit specific responses over time enhances strategic adaptability and interpersonal insight. Daily attention to feedback patterns ensures continuous learning and refinement. Observation without judgment is essential. Detecting patterns requires neutral attention, avoiding projection or interpretation colored by bias. Focus on factual behaviors, timing, and reactions. By separating observation from evaluation, it is possible to gather accurate information that informs understanding and decision-making. Daily practice in neutral observation cultivates discipline, accuracy, and objectivity in interpreting social behavior. Time and frequency analysis provide insight into patterns. Noting when behaviors occur, how often they repeat, and under what conditions builds a detailed map of social tendencies. Regularly observing repeated interactions over days, weeks, or months strengthens predictive ability. Recognizing temporal patterns allows planning, anticipation, and strategic alignment with social dynamics. Subtle shifts often indicate underlying change. Minor adjustments in tone, posture, or word choice can signal evolving priorities, emotions, or intentions. Detecting these shifts early provides the opportunity to respond thoughtfully and maintain alignment in relationships. Daily attentiveness to subtle variations sharpens perception and enables proactive rather than reactive engagement. Documenting observations enhances pattern recognition. Journals, mental notes, or structured tracking of interactions allow reflection, comparison, and identification of recurring trends. Reviewing records over time uncovers insights that may be invisible in isolated instances. Daily documentation ensures patterns are recognized, learned, and applied strategically. Ethical application ensures insight is used responsibly. Detecting patterns in social interactions is a tool for understanding and improving communication, not manipulation. Applying insight to foster collaboration, empathy, and constructive engagement strengthens relationships and enhances influence with integrity. Daily reflection on the ethical use of observed patterns maintains discipline, trust, and authenticity. Practical exercises reinforce mastery. Observe a person for a set period, noting posture, gestures, expressions, tone, and responses. Identify recurring behaviors, triggers, and reactions. Reflect on the accuracy of interpretations and consider alternative explanations. Repeat across multiple interactions and contexts to refine perception. This disciplined practice embeds pattern recognition into natural social observation. Over time, the ability to detect patterns transforms perception. What once seemed random becomes structured, predictable, and interpretable. Relationships, negotiations, and daily communication become informed by insight rather than guesswork. The cumulative effect of consistent observation, reflection, and ethical application strengthens social intelligence, enabling adaptive behavior, effective influence, and harmonious interactions. Mastery of social patterns is not innate but cultivated through deliberate, patient, and continuous attention. Observing micro-behaviors, verbal cues, emotional cycles, feedback loops, and group dynamics provides a rich map of social reality. Applying this insight ethically allows communication to be clear, interactions to be effective, and relationships to be resilient. Daily disciplined practice transforms ordinary social engagement into a structured skill of understanding, prediction, and connection that elevates both personal and professional life. Number 9. Build rapport through psychological strategies. Building rapport is an art rooted in understanding, empathy, and subtle psychological insight. It is not about manipulation or coercion. It is about creating genuine connection, trust, and openness between people. Rapport is the invisible foundation upon which influence, collaboration, and meaningful communication are built. Developing this skill requires attention to behavior, listening with intent, and applying consistent, principled strategies that align with respect and authenticity. Psychological strategies, when applied ethically, enhance rapport by bridging differences, fostering mutual understanding, and creating an environment where communication flows naturally. Begin with active listening. Genuine attention demonstrates interest and signals respect, laying the groundwork for connection. Listening goes beyond hearing words. It involves observing tone, emotion, and body language, as well as understanding the underlying meaning behind statements. Reflecting back what is expressed, summarizing key points, or asking clarifying questions confirms understanding and demonstrates care. Practicing active listening in every interaction strengthens empathy and encourages reciprocal openness, which is a cornerstone of rapport. Mirroring is a subtle psychological strategy that fosters connection. People naturally feel more comfortable with those who resemble their posture, gestures, or speech patterns. Mirroring should be applied ethically and naturally, avoiding exaggeration or mimicry. Matching pace, tone, or body language unconsciously signals alignment, creating familiarity and trust. Daily awareness of personal movement, speech, and demeanor enhances the ability to apply mirroring smoothly, making interactions feel more cohesive and relationally comfortable. Building rapport requires empathy and emotional attunement. Understanding another person's emotional state and responding appropriately establishes comfort and receptivity. Notice cues of stress, excitement, hesitation, or enthusiasm, and adjust your behavior to meet the other person's emotional rhythm. For example, slowing down speech for someone anxious or matching energy for someone enthusiastic creates a sense of alignment. Practicing empathetic attunement consistently develops sensitivity to emotional undercurrents, enhancing rapport naturally. Shared experiences and common ground reinforce connection. Identifying mutual interests, values, or experiences establishes familiarity and reduces perceived distance. Conversations that highlight similarity or shared perspective increase comfort and trust. Asking thoughtful questions that invite the other person to share experiences or opinions while revealing overlap subtly enhances connection. Daily practice in observing interests, preferences, and values enables recognition of opportunities for meaningful connection in interactions of all kinds. Consistency and reliability strengthen rapport. People feel safe and open when interactions are predictable and trustworthy, following through on commitments, responding reliably, and maintaining steady behavior signals integrity. Even small actions, arriving on time, honoring promises, or acknowledging concerns, contribute to the perception of reliability. Daily attention to alignment between words and actions builds credibility, which forms the foundation of lasting rapport. Positive reinforcement amplifies connection. Genuine acknowledgement of contributions, achievements, or thoughtful behavior validates the individual and strengthens engagement. Compliments, expressions of gratitude, or recognition of effort, delivered sincerely, increase receptivity and warmth. Recognizing what others value and affirming those qualities creates psychological resonance. Daily practice in identifying and acknowledging positive behaviors strengthens relational bonds naturally without requiring superficial flattery. Transparency and honesty are central to trust building. People respond positively to authenticity. Open communication about intentions, limitations, and thought processes reduces suspicion and encourages reciprocal openness. Honesty fosters psychological safety, allowing the other person to relax and engage more fully. Daily cultivation of transparency in interactions ensures that rapport is grounded in reality and integrity rather than convenience or manipulation. Questioning strategically enhances connection. Open-ended, thoughtful questions invite dialogue, encourage reflection, and demonstrate interest in the other person's perspective. Questions such as, "What motivated that choice?" or "How did you approach that challenge?" reveal priorities, values, and thought processes, allowing alignment and empathy. Pacing questions appropriately rather than overwhelming or interrogating ensures comfort and receptivity. Daily practice in crafting and posing meaningful questions develops skill in drawing others into authentic conversation. Reciprocity is a psychological principle that fosters rapport naturally. Offering assistance, guidance, or support without expectation of immediate return cultivates trust and relational balance. Acts of kindness, helpfulness, or sharing valuable insight create a sense of mutual benefit and goodwill. Recognizing and responding to contributions from others reinforces positive cycles of exchange. Daily application of ethical reciprocity strengthens rapport by creating relationships characterized by collaboration and mutual respect. Adaptability is essential for connection. Different personalities, communication styles, and cultural backgrounds require nuanced approaches. Observing and responding to preferences in communication decision-making, or social style increases comfort and alignment. Some individuals prefer directness, while others respond better to subtlety. Adapting tone, pacing, and content appropriately without compromising authenticity fosters psychological safety and openness. Daily attention to adapting interactions strengthens versatility in building rapport across diverse settings. Storytelling enhances connection by creating emotional resonance. Sharing experiences, lessons, or relevant narratives fosters relatability and encourages engagement. Well-chosen stories evoke empathy, convey shared values, and illustrate understanding. Ethical storytelling avoids exaggeration and focuses on authenticity, making the interaction meaningful. Practicing storytelling in daily conversation, briefly and purposefully, reinforces connection and invites reciprocity, enhancing psychological alignment. Observation of nonverbal behavior provides critical insight for rapport building. Facial expressions, posture, gestures, and eye contact reveal comfort levels, engagement, and receptivity. Recognizing subtle cues allows adjustment of communication style and timing, increasing comfort and responsiveness. Attuning to these signals in real time creates a dynamic feedback loop, guiding behavior to enhance connection. Daily attention to nonverbal signals builds intuition and responsiveness, making interactions more fluid and effective. Timing and pacing reinforce comfort in social exchange. Speaking too quickly, interrupting, or imposing ideas can disrupt connection, while pacing speech, allowing pauses, and matching conversational rhythm fosters alignment. Observing natural flow and adjusting delivery improves receptivity and relational resonance. Daily practice in mindful pacing develops sensitivity to interpersonal dynamics, increasing the ease and depth of rapport. Emotional regulation underpins effective psychological strategies. Remaining calm, composed, and emotionally consistent reduces tension and encourages openness. Reacting impulsively or emotionally can create distance, while measured responses maintain trust and signal stability. Daily cultivation of emotional control enhances the ability to respond effectively to challenging or dynamic interactions, supporting rapport in diverse situations. Shared humor and light-hearted engagement create psychological ease. Appropriate, empathetic humor reduces tension, builds affinity, and signals approachability. Observing cues of receptivity to levity and timing humorous interactions strategically increases comfort and connection. Practicing light-hearted engagement ethically in daily interactions reinforces positive associations and strengthens relational bonds. Acknowledging perspective differences without judgment maintains trust. Validating another person's viewpoint, even when differing, demonstrates respect and attentiveness. Phrases that reflect understanding, such as, "I see your point," or "that perspective makes sense," convey acknowledgement without requiring agreement, enhancing mutual respect and connection. Daily application of perspective validation strengthens standards by fostering an environment of psychological safety. Consistency in micro-interactions compounds rapport over time. Small gestures, greetings, attentiveness, and follow-ups accumulate into a perception of care and reliability. Each interaction, when approached deliberately, contributes to a broader pattern of connection. Daily awareness and effort in small moments create enduring relational foundations that support long-term influence, collaboration, and trust. Reflection strengthens mastery of rapport building. Reviewing interactions, noting what facilitated connection, and considering areas for improvement ensures continual growth. Identifying effective strategies, successful adjustments, and moments of misalignment allows refinement. Daily reflection on practice consolidates learning, making rapport building a deliberate, disciplined and repeatable skill rather than an accidental occurrence. Psychological strategies for rapport are not one-size-fits-all. They require ethical application, attention to context, and adaptive skill. By consistently applying active listening, mirroring, empathy, transparency, reciprocity, questioning, storytelling, emotional regulation, and observation, meaningful connections are cultivated naturally. Daily practice embeds these strategies into instinctive behavior, transforming ordinary social interactions into opportunities for authentic understanding, trust, and collaboration. Mastering rapport through psychological insight enhances relationships, influence, and communication. Over time, disciplined application, reflection, and adjustment create a nuanced understanding of human behavior, enabling interactions that feel natural, comfortable, and mutually beneficial. Daily attention to connection, ethics, and responsiveness ensures that rapport becomes a stable and powerful element of personal and professional life, fostering trust, collaboration, and meaningful engagement in every interaction. Number 10. Transform mindset using mental frameworks. The mind is the foundation upon which all experiences, decisions, and actions are built. Transforming one's mindset is not a matter of fleeting motivation or occasional inspiration. It is the deliberate cultivation of structured thinking patterns that guide perception, interpretation, and response. Mental frameworks are tools that shape how reality is understood, problems are approached, and challenges are met. They are the architecture of thought that allows individuals to navigate complexity, maintain clarity under pressure, and act consistently toward long-term goals. By consciously applying mental frameworks, it becomes possible to rewire habitual thinking, enhance resilience, and cultivate a mindset that fosters growth, discipline, and success. Begin with awareness of current thought patterns. Most people operate on autopilot, reacting to stimuli according to entrenched habits of thought rather than conscious choice. Observing recurring mental habits, such as self-criticism, avoidance, or reactive thinking, is the first step in transformation. Awareness allows recognition of limiting beliefs, distortions, and biases that constrain behavior and perspective. Daily reflection, journaling, or mindful observation of one's thoughts creates the foundation for deliberate intervention, enabling a shift from passive reaction to intentional cognition. Mental frameworks provide structured lenses through which experiences are interpreted. They are cognitive scaffolds that influence perception and decision-making. For instance, a problem-solving framework emphasizes analysis, evidence, and contingency planning, while a growth framework focuses on learning, adaptation, and incremental improvement. Identifying and adopting appropriate frameworks allows consistent navigation of challenges while reducing emotional reactivity and confusion. Daily application of these structures reinforces clarity and encourages disciplined thought. Cognitive reframing is a powerful method for transforming mindset. It involves consciously altering the way a situation or challenge is perceived, turning obstacles into opportunities for learning or growth. By questioning assumptions and interpreting events through constructive perspectives, habitual negative thinking is replaced with adaptive, empowering thought patterns. Practicing reframing daily strengthens resilience, reduces stress, and promotes proactive behavior in the face of uncertainty or adversity. Visualization and mental modeling enhance framework application. Mentally simulating potential outcomes, decisions, or challenges allows rehearsal of thought processes and emotional responses. Visualizing successful execution reinforces confidence and prepares the mind for real-world action. Constructing detailed mental models of situations helps anticipate variables, recognize dependencies, and generate contingency plans. Daily engagement with mental modeling sharpens judgment and improves decision-making accuracy under pressure. Goal-oriented frameworks anchor mindset transformation. Setting clear, specific, and measurable objectives provides direction and structure to thought processes. Breaking long-term goals into smaller, achievable steps transforms abstract ambition into actionable behavior. Mental frameworks that align with objectives facilitate consistent prioritization, time management, and resource allocation. Daily review and adjustment of goals within these frameworks reinforce alignment between intention, thought, and action, fostering continuous progress. Emotional regulation is integrated into mindset frameworks. Recognizing emotional triggers and implementing structured responses prevents reactive thinking and impulsive decisions. Frameworks such as cognitive behavioral approaches or stoic reflection emphasize observing emotions without immediate judgment, analyzing underlying causes, and choosing deliberate responses. Daily practice in emotional monitoring and structured response strengthens self-control, enhancing clarity and consistency of thought. Pattern recognition is a critical component of mental frameworks. The ability to identify recurring trends, causal relationships, and correlations within complex situations allows informed decision-making and prediction of potential outcomes. Developing mental schemas for patterns accelerates learning and reduces cognitive load by providing reference points for interpretation. Observing recurring events, responses, and results daily enhances analytical capability and supports adaptive mindset development. Self-reflection and metacognition strengthen framework integration. Thinking about thinking enables awareness of biases, assumptions, and habitual interpretations that shape perception. Metacognition allows individuals to step back from automatic thought processes, evaluate their accuracy, and adjust frameworks as necessary. Daily exercises in reflection, such as reviewing decisions, assessing outcomes, and questioning assumptions, reinforce flexible, conscious, and adaptive thinking. Ethical anchoring ensures frameworks support sustainable and principled behavior. Mental models influence not only interpretation, but also choice. Aligning frameworks with core values, integrity, and long-term purpose prevents short-term expedience from compromising decisions. Daily attention to ethical alignment maintains consistency between thought, action, and personal standards, fostering trust, credibility, and internal cohesion. Incremental adjustment of thought patterns ensures sustainable transformation. Sudden attempts to overhaul mindset often fail due to cognitive resistance and entrenched habits. Gradually replacing limiting frameworks with constructive ones allows the mind to adapt steadily, introducing one new perspective or approach at a time, reflecting on its impact and reinforcing its application builds cumulative momentum. Daily practice of incremental adjustments ensures long-term durability of mindset transformation. Mental flexibility enhances adaptability. While structured frameworks provide stability, the ability to shift perspectives, combine frameworks, or adopt alternative approaches allows navigation of unforeseen challenges. Flexibility prevents rigidity, enhances creativity, and promotes innovative problem-solving. Practicing daily adaptability, experimenting with alternative approaches, and evaluating outcomes cultivates an agile mindset capable of thriving in dynamic environments. Feedback integration is essential. Observing the results of decisions, behaviors, and interpretations provides evidence for adjusting mental frameworks. Incorporating feedback reduces error, reinforces accurate models, and strengthens cognitive alignment with reality. Daily reflection on outcomes and integrating lessons into frameworks creates iterative improvement, reinforcing adaptive and responsive thinking. Habits of disciplined thought complement framework application. Scheduling deliberate periods for reflection, planning, and analysis ensures consistent engagement with mental models. Consistent mental rehearsal, journaling, and prioritization embed frameworks into routine cognition, making structured thinking automatic rather than occasional. Daily reinforcement through disciplined practice consolidates mindset transformation and reduces reliance on transient motivation. Language and self-talk shape mental frameworks. Internal dialogue reinforces perception, belief, and behavior. Shifting from negative, self-limiting language to constructive, solution-focused phrasing strengthens framework alignment. Phrases emphasizing growth, opportunity, and capability reinforce adaptive mental patterns. Daily monitoring and conscious adjustment of internal dialogue fortifies mindset transformation by aligning thought with intention. Visualization of identity supports mindset change. Conceptualizing oneself through the lens of desired qualities, behaviors, and capabilities creates an internal model to emulate. Framing identity around growth, resilience, or discipline provides a stable reference for interpreting challenges and opportunities. Daily reinforcement of identity visualization strengthens alignment between self-perception, behavior, and mental frameworks, guiding consistent action. Scenario planning expands the applicability of frameworks. Anticipating potential obstacles, reactions, and outcomes allows preemptive development of strategies and thought structures. By rehearsing mental responses to various scenarios, decision-making becomes faster, more precise, and less reactive. Practicing scenario planning daily reinforces cognitive readiness and builds confidence in navigating uncertainty. Mindset transformation is cumulative. Repeated application of frameworks over weeks and months rewires habitual thought patterns, gradually shifting perception, interpretation, and behavior. Each reflection, adjustment, and rehearsal reinforces neural pathways that support disciplined, constructive thinking. Daily commitment to framework application accelerates integration, making adaptive, resilient cognition a default mode rather than an occasional effort. Integration of multiple frameworks enhances versatility. Combining analytical, emotional, strategic, and reflective models provides a multi-dimensional approach to interpreting experiences. This layered understanding increases precision, flexibility, and insight. Daily practice in integrating frameworks strengthens mental acuity, enabling consistent navigation of complex personal, professional, and social challenges. Mindset transformation through mental frameworks empowers clarity, resilience, and purposeful action. By observing existing patterns, adopting structured perspectives, applying cognitive reframing, reinforcing ethical principles, and reflecting consistently, it is possible to reshape habitual thought processes into adaptive, constructive, and strategic thinking. Daily disciplined practice transforms the mind into a reliable instrument of decision, perception, and behavior, allowing one to navigate life with intention, wisdom, and unwavering focus. The ultimate strength of mental frameworks lies in their cumulative effect. Small, consistent interventions compound, producing profound changes in perception, reaction, and decision-making over time. By committing to structured observation, deliberate practice, reflective adjustment, and ethical alignment, mindset becomes a tool of mastery rather than a passive instrument. Daily engagement ensures that thought patterns evolve continuously, enabling sustained personal growth, heightened awareness, and a life guided by intentional, disciplined, and adaptive cognition.